Hello everyone, today we're going to be doing our end of topic on lines, gradients and regions. So the homework is already attached on Show My Homework. It's also got a link on Microsoft Teams, and all I'm going to do here is I'm going to quickly go through each question and give you little tips on what you should be doing on every question, so that I don't get 100 questions all asking about the same different thing for every question and I don't have to explain it over and over again. Okay, so for question one, what you need to do is you need to write down what the gradient of the line is and where the y-intercept is. So don't forget the equation of a line is y equals mx plus c. M is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. Remember, it only works if you've got one y. So the first ones for A and B, these ones are going to be quite straightforward. The number in front of the x is going to be the gradient. The bit at the end is going to be the y-intercept. For part C here, you are going to have to start by rearranging it. You want to take the 4x and the 3 across to the other side, but that's still going to leave you with two y's, and as I've just said a second ago, you will want one y. So then you might have to half everything before you can just pick out the numbers for the gradient and the intercept. Apart from that, that's quite a nice, straightforward question. Any of those types of questions there could well be on a real exam paper. Question 2 is find the equations of the straight lines labelled. So you've got an A, a B, a C and a D. So each of these are going to be y equals mx plus c's. For every line that we've got there, we need to find the gradient and the y-intercept. So the y-intercept should not cause you any problems. For the gradient, in class what we would have done is drawn the right angle triangles that we discussed quite a few weeks ago now. I think it was before the Easter break. So think about drawing right angle triangles and keep in mind that the gradient is found by doing the height of your right angle triangle divided by the width of your right angle triangle. Or you can do it by counting across one square and then counting how many up you need to go. Also keep in mind with B and D, those lines are going down, so they will be negative gradients. Once again, those are quite standard questions that you could get on any GCSE paper, so make sure that you can do those quite confidently. Question 3 is the same as what we've just done there, but written in a bit of a slightly different way. It says work out the gradient of the line passing through -512 and 954. So here you almost have to kind of picture what the right angle triangle would look like. You need to work out what the width of this triangle would be and what the height would be. So we do that by working out the difference in the y coordinates. In other words, we're going to do 54 take away 12, and we're going to divide it by the difference in the y coordinates. So we're going to do 9 minus -5, and then we can do the divide. So it's the difference in the y numbers divided by the difference in the x numbers. Question 4, we never really did this in this topic, but we did it earlier on in the year. It was about finding midpoints of a line. So to find the midpoints, you add the numbers together and half it. So if I wanted to work out what was in the middle of 6 and 10, even though we know it's going to be 8, what we would do is we would do 6 add 10 is 16 and then half it. And what we need to do for this question is find the midpoint of the x values and then the midpoint of the y values. Now looking at those numbers, you're going to have to find the midpoint of 3 and 11 and then the midpoint of the -4 and the 10. Okay, just be careful with that negative one. Remember what happens if you're doing a negative number add a positive. Question 5, this is quite recent stuff. This is inequalities. It says write down the inequalities that describe each of the shaded regions. So the key numbers are on there. The first one's just going to be one very little single inequality. The second one, you might write it as 2 inequalities, or you might write it as 1 inequality but with 2 inequality signs there because it's in between 2 numbers. You can see that we need to be between -7 and 9, so just think carefully about how you're going to write that inequality out. Question 6, let me just get rid of that one. Question 6 says, for this question, draw and label both axes from 0 to 9. Okay, so this is the only set of axes, I think, on the entire homework that you actually have to draw out yourself. So just make sure that you can draw it accurately and make sure each one's equally spaced and so on. And then all we've got to do is draw a region. Okay, it does say leave the required region unshaded. I don't mind if you actually shade in the required region, as long as it's really clear at the final, at the end of what you're doing, which region is the one that's wanted. Okay, you normally mark it with a nice like R or something, just to kind of show that this is the region we want. So there are 3 regions that you need to draw, and then shade in the bit that ticks all boxes. That's pretty much what we were doing on Friday, so maybe just double check that you can remember what we're doing. Question 7 is what we did last Thursday. It says find equations of lines that are parallel and perpendicular to a given line given another coordinate. Okay, so that's plugging things back into y equals mx plus c. And question 8 looks a bit like this. And it says the graph shows the prices for taxi journeys of different lengths. The formula is P equals MD plus C, where P is the price in pounds and D is the distance in kilometres. Find the values of M and C, and in this context, what do the values M and C tell you? So this is pretty much like a real life version of y equals mx plus c, except for in this question, they're calling the y that we would normally call y, they're calling it P, and what we would normally call x, they're calling it D. Apart from that, it's the same question. So for part A, you're using y equals mx plus c, or P equals md plus c in this question. So we need to find the gradient of that line, and then we need to find the y-intercept. Now the y-intercept looks quite easy. It's marked on the graph for you. To find the gradient, you might need to do kind of what we did all the way back in question, I think it was question 3. Just trying to see, no, where is it? Where's question 3? Just trying to find it again. It was very similar to what we did. No, that's question 4. I wanted question 3 to come up to the top. It's still bringing up question 4, even though I've just said, give me question 3. There's question 3. Here we go. Question 3 was work out the gradient of these lines. I don't know why it's not letting me put it on the top there. So if we had 2 points, we said it was a difference in y divided by the difference in x. On question 8, what you need to do then is work out 2 points. You can kind of see where they are on the graph. Work out the difference in the y's, work out the difference in the x's, and then do a divide. That'll tell you what the value for m is, and like I say, c is the intercept. It then says in this context, what do the values of m and c tell you? Okay, that's quite a tricky question to think about at first, but these type of questions do come up quite a lot. I'm going to kind of pretty much tell you what the answer is, but then you're going to have to try and write it up in your own words. So if this is the price that a taxi will charge you, okay, you can see that the price depends on your distance that you travel in the taxi. So the y-intercept, the value for C, is pretty much the price you have to pay for this taxi the moment you sit in the taxi. When you have travelled 0 kilometres, they are still going to charge you a certain value. That is what C is. That's the context. The context is how much the taxi will charge you even if you don't travel any kilometres. What M is going to then tell you is M is going to tell you how much it then costs for every extra mile that you travel. Okay, so have a look at that question, sorry, and if you get stuck, maybe just rewind what I've said and see if you can figure it out. Question 9 is pretty much the same as what we did last Thursday, and question 10 again is what we did on Friday, so it's a regions question, and this time you need to write down what the regions are, and it says that are needed to define the unshaded area. So we want the white triangle in the middle, so think about what we need to get rid of in order to keep that white triangle as it is. So there's 10 questions there. Give it a go. What I'm going to ask you all to do is by Tuesday at the latest is send me the work so I can have a look at it, make sure everyone's actually done it. Then what I'll maybe do is I'll send out what the answers should have been. Maybe I'll write them up myself, and then you'll mark them based on my answers, just so that you can kind of get a bit of quicker wins feedback that way. Then we are going to move on to our next topic. So that will be started on Tuesday's lesson. And if I remember, if I have a quick look myself here, the next topic we're going to be doing is all about ratio and proportion, which isn't too bad to try and do by yourselves. It's going to be a lot easier to do the ratio and proportion type questions than all this inequality. So if you have struggled on this, don't worry too much. The next topic is going to be much nicer. As usual, if you do get stuck and watching the video again doesn't help, please drop me a message and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can to help you. I will see you all on Tuesday.